Welcome inside episode 659 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains, and the Ottawa Senators win streak is over at 4 after a 4-2 loss at home to the Minnesota Wild.
And the Belleville Senators are hoping to start a win streak of their own on the road this weekend in Milwaukee and Rockford.
We'll get into all that, plus a very special announcement, and it's all brought to you by BetOnline. More props, odds, and lines than ever before. Visit BetOnline. It's where the game starts. And now the show starts. This is the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Thank you for making Locked On Senators your first listen on this Friday, October 28th. The show is free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube, where the best way you can help the show grow is to like every video by clicking the thumbs up, subscribing to the Locked On Senators channel, and being a friend by telling a friend that they should do the same. I want you to leave a comment today as well. The comment is, what were your thoughts on DJ Smith electing to pull the goalie with 2:33 left on a power play with possession in the offensive zone? We got into a lot of that on yesterday's postcast, but Pilsy, you've now had 12 hours to sleep on it. What are your thoughts? Who's to blame if I have to throw a dart at the board?
I mean, I don't want to play the blame game here, and that's what we kind of got into on the postcast. Before I dive into that, though, we teased it a little bit. Marc Methot on the show. We have an announcement that we're going to make. You'll hear it in the interview, but I want to let the good people know that we have about 40 minutes with Marc Methot here, and get used to that.
If we should do that regularly.
It would be very cool if that was a recurring thing, but you'll hear all about that. Now, as far as pulling the goalie, I thought it was the right decision. Good decision, poor execution. Like, Batherson tries to force that pass. Chabot bobbles it at the blue line. Then it's a breakaway, and you're done there. I think it's not a decision you should be making 10 out of 10 times. I think as a coach, you need to feel the atmosphere, the vibe of the team. How are things going? Are the guys feeling good? Do you feel like you have a good opportunity to score here? And I thought that was the right approach at that time. The Sens were turning things up at the end of the third period. They finally were showing some life. It's a 3-2 game, 6-on-4. So I don't hate the decision, but you have to time that decision right. And you mentioned it, Ross, in the postcast. Not having a timeout there, I feel, is crucial because you can't get a full game plan ready there. So tough way to lose, but when you're coming off a 4-game win streak, I'm not going to, like, the main message is let's not overreact here. It's going to be okay.
Yes, and I think the other message is fatigue is real. Maybe not as much for the players, but like the fans, like that's 5 straight games at home. And now the Ottawa Senators will head down to Florida, where Marc Methot said it, it's green light city after they play the Panthers in an afternoon game with 2 days off before they take on the Tampa Bay Lightning. For more on last night's game, we just want to point you to the postcast because we do have a jam-packed show. We want to touch on the Belleville Sens, though. Before we get there, Sens prospects with a very good update for one of our guys, Billsy, one of our favorite interviews from this year, or this offseason, I should say, was Oscar Pettersson, and he's been named to Sweden's U20 team for tune-up games in November. That means he's on the radar to play at the World Juniors. So stick taps to Pistol Pete.
Yeah, you love to see that because when World Juniors are happening, obviously we all cheer for Canada. We get the red and white jerseys out, but you want to see some Sens prospects so that you can follow along there. So that's a very positive sign for sure.
Yes, 100%. Maybe next year we see Pettersson in Belleville, but they're stacked up with young talent. Love the way they battled through, got the win with 8 seconds left against Laval, but another tough test is coming ahead, and they're still looking. They're 500 on the year, Pilsy, but they're still looking after 6 games for their first win against a team not named Laval.
Yeah, exactly. Y'all got any more of that Laval Rocket verbal meme? Yeah. But hey, having said that, Ross, your Belleville Senators, at least the last I checked, were at the top of the North Division. in the AHL. So that's a spot you love to be. And although Milwaukee has been a better team, they're having a rough start too, and so is Rockford. So these are teams, although you're not familiar with them, you're going on the road. I expect the Senators to at least split this road series here, Ross, especially with Sogard coming back into the fold.
Yes, that's a great point. Matt Sogard will be in net for a team that's just been crushed with injuries to goalies, from Cam Talbot to, well, shortly Anton Forsberg, just missing the one game. He's already been back, but Matt Sogard
Antoine
there.
Bibeau
Bibeau.
also injured,
Yep,
unfortunately.
100%. Well, stick taps to Mando. He played excellent
Yep,
in
he
Laval
did.
and got them the victory in that game. A slow start for them and a slow middle period for Ottawa last night. But again, we got into that on the postcast. This is a big weekend, though, for Belleville. Who are you looking forward to watching? Because for me, it's Ridley Gregg. Had an assist in his first game back, but I want to see him really establish himself up the middle, both tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah, Ridley Gregg's definitely a good one. Ross, I'm going to stick with my guy in Belleville. And it's Jake Lucchini. Like, say what you want about this guy, but once again, Ross, he's leading this team in points. 9 points in 6 games. It cannot be understated how much, or cannot be overstated. You know what I'm trying to say. I want to amplify how great of a pickup that was for the Belleville Senators, because something in the water in the Bay of Quinte that sparked a fire in Jake Lucchini, because he's been a stud ever since coming over from, thank you, the Laval Rocket.
Oh, right. That's where they got him, too. That's awesome. Great stuff. And then Rourke Chartier, no stranger to scoring game winners against Laval. That's 2 for him this year. The other one was in overtime. So great stuff there for the Belleville Sens. One note we do want to get into on the Ottawa Senators, again, before we get to Marc Methot on the show, is Alex DeBrincat scored on a goalie, Pilsy. That's nice.
Yeah, you love to see that. That's for sure. And I mentioned, I think the floodgates are going to open now. Like, he got 7 shots. He could have had a Hattie easily. Excuse me. If it's
his old teammate.
Yeah, if Gus is the guy in net instead of Fleury, I think that makes things a little bit better. Not to throw a ricochet shot at Gus there, but he's been playing great. And I think now that he's got that confidence, and now that unfortunately Norris is out of the lineup, he's going to have to look at himself and be like, I really have to step up as this team's bona fide sniper. Get used to seeing number 12 light the lamp.
I will bet that the views on episodes where Marc Methot comes on are going to skyrocket for the Locked On Senators podcast. I wish they had those odds at BetOnline, but you can pretty much bet on everything else. BetOnline.net is your one-stop shop for all things sports wagering, and for good reason. They have all the information you need: news, stats, analysis, podcasts, all the great things that go into being a successful, responsible sports wagerer. You can find them all at BetOnline. Pilsy, I will allow you a victory lap. Your parlay is now 1-2.
Thank you, Ross. I need to revel in that moment. Went back to the drawing board, went to the lab, some things up, saw some opportunities and pounced on them. So yes, that was a big parlay. Nashville and Vancouver get the win. So next week I'll be riding high with a 1-2 record.
Whether you follow or fade, you can do it all at BetOnline. It's where the game starts. All right, Pilsy. Marc Methot coming up on the show, and I'm just going to say it. It's going to be a weekly thing. We're very excited to add him to the Locked On team. We get into why the Wally and Methot show ended. It was a lot. They want to do more content. Marc has obviously a busy schedule, young family, and we thought, what better way? He can still shoot the breeze. He can get his takes off and use his history of playing for this team as a way to help fans kind of get the player side of what things are going. So we could not be more thrilled to add him to the squad.
Yeah, we're honestly honored. Like Ross, when we've been doing this podcast a long time, and Marc Methot has been on our list of guys we want to get on the show, and then he started his own podcast. And then we had the crossover; it went really well, and now it's a blessing in disguise that we get this opportunity. Now, we don't have anything nailed down as far as it's going to be this time, this day, all the time, but he has said he wants to come on regularly. He enjoys chatting with us. We love chatting with him, and yeah, you guys are going to have a lot of fun conversations to follow along with, because we went 40 minutes today, Ross, and this is just the first time. So we're going to get a lot of good stuff from Marc Methot, and can't thank him enough for agreeing to help us out and join us.
Bellsy, let's do a little trivia before we get to Marc Methot.
Great.
Where in Sens franchise history do you think he ranks in average time on ice per game?
What? How am I ever supposed to get this?
Well, that's the thing. You gotta give me a ballpark, and then I'll just tell you.
19th.
8th.
Nice.
Played a lot of hockey for the Ottawa Senators, averaging 21-16. Only players in franchise history to average more: Erik Karlsson, Zdeno Chara, Thomas Chabot, Sergei Gonchar, Philip Kuba, Igor Kravchuk, and Dion Phaneuf. That last one surprises me a little bit. But Marc Methot, obviously a veteran of many NHL games. He played 304 of his 624 games with the Ottawa Senators. And now let's go bring in what he thinks about not only last night's game that he worked at TSN, his fashion game is called into question, and a whole lot more. All right, this is our interview with former Sens defenseman, TSN broadcaster. It's Marc Methot. All right, we now welcome a very special guest back to the Locked On Senators podcast. He's an Ottawa Sting success story turned longtime NHLer. Marc Methot, what's going on today, brother?
That's the first time I've been addressed as a former Ottawa Sting member. It's kind of cool.
Hey, you set the bar for all of us who wore the B on the front of their uniform at Poplinski Arena. But no, so you're working the game last night, and we'd be remiss not to start with your salmon suit that caught headlines nationally, internationally. You said you got a text from Mark Stone. Was that your decision to wear or someone at TSN?
No, so I don't have a ton of suits because I haven't gouged TSN yet to kind of rebate me on suits and stuff like that, where you send in the receipt. So I'm still running off all the old stuff that I used to wear as a player. And I've got a couple really crazy ones that I've been reluctant to put on because I don't want to get buried on national television. But my wife was actually the one that suggested I wear that ridiculous picnic tablecloth suit thing last night. And and she made a good point. She's like, what you do is not serious. Like, this isn't a serious job.
Yeah.
You're talking like an asshole about hockey on TV. Like, no one cares. So I said, okay, I'll put it on. So that's what happened.
Have some fun. And Mark, honestly, like, I kind of liked it. Like, the boys are giving you a hard time, but I kind of liked it. But where I got to dock you some marks, and this is what we learned at college sports media, is you got to match the kerchief with the tie. The kerchief and the tie were not matching. What happened there? Was there a colorblind issue or a little mix up? Or
I don't have a ton of pocket squares. So because they're so like I was at Harry Rosen, I want to say just before the season, and they were outfitting me with a couple suits, and they started showing me some of these pocket squares, and they were like $90 a piece for this little piece of cloth.
Yep.
And I, me being pretty frugal, I'm like, well, what am I going to do with it? So I just last night I was scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to find something that matched, and it was the closest thing I could get to that dark navy tie I was wearing. Anyway, that's the story.
If you're looking for cheap options for this, and Ross, I always pulled this out at school and people are always impressed. You can get, it's literally a piece of cardboard, and then on the top of the cardboard, like 3 inches of it is a fancy design, and you just slide that in. It's like $5 each. That's what you want, Mark. Go find those. Okay. That's the play.
Thanks,
yeah,
I'll do that.
No worries. I'm looking out for you.
I thought you were going to go with the Carey Price move of using his wife's lingerie, where he did that at the NHL award show.
I mean, that's probably more expensive than the $90 pocket squares.
It is. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go there, but it's an idea.
No. Hey, so how much fun are you having on the TSN broadcast? I'm sure you felt the same way, but you obviously take a few steps to get your feet wet, but now it looks like you're as comfortable as ever.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. It's been a big change from the long format, sit down and talk shop on a podcast, which I love too. But the challenge, especially during the anthem, things that people don't see. I mean, I'm always having to go first, so there's 2 analysts, but because I'm remotely right out of the CTC, I cannot go over the national anthem. So there are times where my hits on the openers are like 15 seconds long because they're yelling in my ear to wrap it up because the anthem. So when whoever the host in Toronto is setting everything up and maybe they go on a little too long, I have to sort of kind of speed my bit up. And so the other night, I think it was for the Arizona game, I was attempting to talk about, I think it was Jake Sanderson, but I think I said like 3 lines, and then I'm like, I just stop talking, and then it goes back to the host, and so it can come across awkward at times. So those are some of the challenges we're facing. But other than that, it's fantastic gig, and everyone's been great, and I'm really enjoying it.
Sounds good, Mark. There's always like that 2-second delay when, they throw to you from
Mark.
the studio. Yeah,
I know. We're working through that.
What's it like for you now? Obviously, you played in Ottawa for quite a while. The CTC was your office. Now, similar thing, but in a different perspective. Do you get kind of those nostalgic vibes heading back to the rink? You got your suit, you got your coffee, you're ready for the game. Like, what's the vibe like for you going into the CTC as a player versus now as a broadcaster?
It's flattering because a lot of people kind of know who you are, right? If there's any environment, if there's any environment I can think of for a former player, it would be, where you played a lot of your hockey. And so everyone's always very welcoming, from all the ushers, the security people. But more significantly was probably the other day was the first time I'd gone down to the room. The trainers, unbelievable training staff, and they hooked me up some new gear. I wanted some of the 2D stuff, like the pants, helmet. So I went to the rink, the day before the game. So that would have been I've got all my days mixed up. I don't even know what day of the week it is right now.
I thought it was Sunday yesterday. I was like 8 days away.
Right.
It's Friday, for clarification's sake, guys. It's
I'd
Friday.
gone in on the day after their last. So on Sunday, I'm really messing this whole thing up. We might have to restart. But the point is, I went down to the dressing room and they hooked me up, and DJ came by, a lot of the players. This is something that the organization is putting a lot of effort in towards right now. And it's welcoming in a lot of the alumni and making them feel, comfortable coming around the rink more now, because it's beneficial to have former players around. It never hurts you as an organization. So, DJ came by, had a bowl of oatmeal or whatever he was eating. And he's, "Oh, Meth, you should go back there and grab some of this stuff." And he's just smashing it in front of me by the skate sharpener while I'm shooting the shit with the guys. And just a warm environment. And they're doing a fantastic job with that. And you can see everyone's happy. Everyone's having a good time. It's relaxed. Now that was coming off for their fourth win in a row.
That helps.
Dressing rooms can get a lot more negative when you start to head on a skid a little bit, but things are looking good in there right now, and everyone's happy, and the vibes are positive. So yeah, as a former player, they're doing a really good job right now, particularly this season, bringing guys back.
Did I hear you're playing a pros versus Joes matchup with some other alumni tonight?
Yeah. So I don't know who's playing, like, as far as alumni go, but I'm sure guys like Neeler wouldn't miss that for the world. So he'll be out there.
He's been training
running around.
it, eh?
Yeah, guaranteed. He's probably activating right now as we speak. And then and prior to the skate, which starts at 7, I'm on the ice with Chris Phillips, and we're teaching an under 10 girls team, I think.
Awesome.
That probably won some kind of contest to get there. So it'll be fun to head back out there tonight. I have no idea how my knee's going to feel afterwards, but I'm looking forward to it. I'll pump a bunch of strong Advils and get out there. And then, of course, quick turnaround for me. I'm on the ice tomorrow morning with my son at like 7 a.m. So I'm going to have to try to be careful on the beers after the game tonight. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. I don't know how physical I'm going to be. If I have an opportunity to lay somebody out, I probably will, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, after that rehashing of your hip check highlight reel, shame not to.
Yeah. So you guys boosted the numbers on that video too. I looked at it after that repost. It went up a notch again. So it's always fun to look at that, though.
That's an elite reel.
They did a good job with it for sure. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to tonight. That'll be a lot of fun.
And the best part is you didn't even have to ask for that reel made by Sportsnet. No,
I know.
And then turned to TSN a month later.
Yeah. That's what happens.
That's awesome. So we obviously know the story of Chris Neal. He goes full out in these. Who are some of the other guys that you see around town, though, that used to play for the team? It seems like there's a decent contingent of guys in Ottawa.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of them throughout the year. In the summertime, they'll come and go. I mean, Stoney came for a little bit last summer. Eric was here. We had a nice send-off with Eric Carlson. Me and a couple other guys were all in the same group chat on WhatsApp, and we've always kind of kept in touch together. And so we were able to hang out with him before he left. But during the season, it's pretty quiet. Everyone's sort of on their own program. And a lot of the former players that used to live here a little bit more on a permanent basis are now gone. Like Kyle Turse, for example, just built a place out in BC, closer to his family. So you're not really getting Pajot, another player, obviously not here during the winter. But I mean, players do tend to come back here in the summertime, and Ottawa's a great city. It really is. I mean, it can get cold as hell in the winter, and sometimes we get funny weather, but it's an easy city to get around, and certainly lots of golf and a lot of pretty affordable housing. I guess I shouldn't say that anymore, but I mean, typically in the past, a little cheaper than living in Toronto or Vancouver. So yeah, no, I mean, as far as keeping in touch, really the only guys like Mark Stone, he was texting me the entire game last night, and I'd have to ask him occasionally, like that second period, I think it was in the second period where it was sort of back and forth, and then Minnesota took over.
Yeah.
I was asking Stone, like, what are you seeing that I'm not? Like, what can Ottawa do differently? So he was giving me some advice as well. So it's nice to have a lot of current players able to kind of chime in and give me an idea what I'm doing sometimes. And so having fun with that.
I had a big smile just knowing that Mark Stone decided to tune into Ottawa's game versus the other ones that were on.
He sent me a picture of his setup, and it was 3 TVs.
Oh,
and I think he had I don't know if it was a football game. I couldn't really, or it could have been
Thursday
golf.
night.
But that main screen that he had going was the mini Sens game, and
Nice.
yeah, he's still very much locked in, and I know what that's like. You know, you want to sort of pay attention on a casual level to your former team because you're always curious, and there's some guys that you're still well aware of. But seemed like he was a big fan of Sanderson. Talked about Pinto a little bit too, but yeah, I think he likes the direction of the way this team is going.
Yeah, no question. Well, hey, Vegas looks pretty good as well. Their start to the season, if they stay healthy, you know, sky's the limit for them.
That's
Even
what it is.
Ugliest uniforms in the National Hockey League. Who knows? Maybe Stoner just wanted to pretend like he was going out for a picnic with the wife, having you on the screen right front and center. Hey, let's go to another one of your teammates, the only guy who still plays for the team. I mean, he had 8 stops between leaving and then coming back. But how are you liking Brass fitting in that second line spot?
And I know, like, it's funny, eh? How contentious these topics get. Like, I've never been like, listen, he belongs on the second line and only the second line. Like I can tell you, even Derek doesn't give a shit where he's playing in the lineup. He just wants to contribute. Now, obviously, he wants to play a lot, like any competitive player. But a player at that age, and I've been there, I know what it's like. You just want to contribute. You don't care where you were slotted in the lineup. Certainly, he wants to be in the lineup. But more specifically on this topic, I'm going to stop kind of dodging it. For now, I mean, I don't like using last night's game as a benchmark because it was a sloppy game all around from everybody. And the Sens were due for one. So people are talking about DJ and you know what he did. Why do you pull the goal? I'm like, they had full control in the offensive zone. It makes sense. Now, there was a bit of a fumble mess up. I don't know if I can swear on this podcast, but they kind of fumbled the puck a little bit on the attempt. I think it was it Batherson trying to go to the point there to Shabbat. Kind of fumbles the puck a little bit. Yeah, and so, you know, it's easy to look at it after the fact and criticize so and so and so and so. But I mean, this team was on a 4-game winning streak. Let's just calm down a little bit, right? So, but as far as Brass goes, that can be fluid. And I had that conversation with Pooley prior to the game as well. You can move Brass and Pinto or flip them after 2 shifts. It doesn't need to be a 5-game segment and then you switch it up. You can do it at any point. Whenever DJ feels like he needs to shake things up a little bit, he can do that. So, you know, I don't know that Brass would fit on that 4th line. It's potentially there, but people will fawn over players, right? Like you'll look at Kastelik, for example, and see him on the 4th and he's playing pretty well. And then all of a sudden you think, oh boy, well, he can handle more minutes. Let's put him on the 3rd line. Like it's the responsibility is significantly different when you go from line to line. Your matchups are going to be significantly different. I said that about Pinto. Like Pinto right now is playing against 3rd line players and 2nd and 3rd line defensemen. That's not an indictment to Pinto. That's not to say he can't handle those more minutes, but you got to understand that the responsibility given to this young player against those top lines could potentially hinder his confidence, right? So those are all things that you have to take into consideration. I'm not married to the idea that Brass will remain on the 2nd line with Giroux, but if they continue to be a little productive, I don't know why you would break that up. I mean, they probably had the most chances of any of the lines last night, you know, given, and of course you have to consider it was a shit game by everybody all around, but I would give them another chance here going into Florida, see how that plays out. And then again, it's fluid. You can always change it up.
So the last time the Ottawa Senators won 5 games in a row, you had 2 assists on that.
Go figure.
And the first game, you probably remember this one. It was right after you guys acquired Alex Burrows. He had 2 goals, and then Guy Boucher goes, wonder what people think of the trade now. Were you one of the players that hugged or high-fived Jared Oria after that one?
And that's no fault of Pierre. Like, like once you get to know Pierre a little bit, he just loves the game so much, right? Like he's so passionate. So sometimes he'll say something like that,
I love
and it gets taken, and it can be a little corny, but like that's just he loves the game. He's a passionate guy, so I get it. But that's an interesting stat about the 2 assists. That is a rare occurrence.
Yeah, man, you had like a third of your season's points in that streak, March 3rd to March 9th, 2017. Yeah, not a big deal. That spring, you guys obviously had some playoff success too. I know that we talk obviously about you scoring against the Rangers, the hip check against Malkin. Like out of that playoff run, what do you think your crowning achievement was individually?
Oh man, well I was still playing. It's funny because there was like a progression to that because I was still playing with a banged up finger, and
Correct.
And so that first round against Boston, you'd think my memory's terrible, by the way, so sometimes you might have to correct me, but that first round against Boston, I still remember every pass. You know that feeling when you're hitting a baseball and you're not wearing ball gloves and you've got a bat, and you get that vibration throughout your body, and it hurts. Like it legitimately hurts. Yeah. So I was dealing with a lot of that initially, and then so they had to fuse the 2 fingers together and my glove fingers rather together and splint it for games. So I mean, my hands were not by any means great to begin with. You add that element to it, and it's like, wow, I'm like chopping snakes out there on the ice trying to stick handle the puck. So that was a challenge, but it did get better. And then in the New York series, where where the light went on, was when I grabbed Nick Holden in a scrum at the end of one of the games, and I was trying to fight him, and I was just I was seeing red for some reason. I don't remember why. But I remember holding him with my bad hand, and it didn't feel terrible. And that right there for me was a bit of a turning point. But I don't remember one specific moment for me. I mean, I remember the Malkin hit vividly. I remember getting scored on, when we got scored on in double overtime vividly. Like there are, as a player, you have like snapshots of moments on the ice, and they're so vivid. And then there are other moments, periods that you don't remember a single thing from, right? So the hip check for sure was cool, but I mean, I've had better plays throughout those series, but that was probably very significant because it was Malkin. But I just remember, and I don't think I've ever said this, I remember how good I felt every game. And there's a weird thing where that time of year, the sun's out. So prior to games, like even in the afternoons after like our naps, whatever it was, I would take every opportunity to sit outside and just absorb sunshine. Nice. And I honest to God, I think there's something to be said there. When you're hiding in hotels all the time and you're not getting vitamin D, kind of feel crappy. In the Pittsburgh series, everywhere, I'd go on these long walks, take my tarp off, and like sit on a random park bench in like in an outdoor setting. And obviously down there, no one knows who you are. So I could just sit there and, big beard, all like haggard looking, and I'd take my shirt off and I'd just sit back and try to get a tan or absorb sunshine. And I always felt great. And when we were in New York, Bobby and I would go to like IV bars, nice. Like areas where you could just get pumped up with like vitamin B bags, like those big syringe bags. And I'd get hooked up and sit there in the chair. And we would do that pretty frequently as well. And we felt amazing. I don't even know if I could say this or if it was legal at the time as far as the NHL goes, but we were doing it.
Yeah. And they're not taking wins. They're not taking wins away from you anymore.
No, it's too late.
And your paycheck's already deposited, so I don't think they're getting you with fines.
And you guys played some sick towns that playoff run though.
Unreal.
Like, Madison Square Garden in the playoffs, like Bubba O'Reilly playing when you get out there, like that has to be a memory, eh?
Yeah, like that was wild. Because I played in Montreal a couple of playoff rounds in years prior, as you guys know, and that was really, really cool. And I still think Montreal would be my favorite barn to play in because of the fan base. But that fan base in New York and the atmosphere at MSG is just different. And you just mentioned there, Ross, with all the music playing and the celebrities in the stands. Like we had like Margot Robbie and Liam Neeson, and you see them. Like you're coming off the ice and you're always kind of double taking it when you're going to the bench, and eventually you forget they're there. But those timeouts, they'll have them up on the scoreboards, and all these random people. There were a few people from Game of Thrones as well. I forget which actors, but
nice.
It's a surreal feeling. And I still remember standing on the blue line during the national anthems and like it's pumping in there. And I'm looking over at Eric, and he's beside me, and like maybe Stoney, and you're just kind of looking. You're just trying to absorb it all in, but maintaining your focus at the same time, which is hard to do. But if I could go back and relive those moments again, man, it was an incredible run, and I know we talk about it ad nauseum, and it's like the one thing we hang our hats on is former Senators, and it was like 5 years ago now when I look back, but we had a great time, man. It was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, we love that playoff run. I don't know if you know, Mark, but we started our podcast during the 2017 season, and we thought, okay, this is going to be great. The Sens are going to make the playoffs every year. They're one goal away from the Stanley Cup Finals. Like, we're going to have such a breeze doing a podcast covering this team 5 days a week. And then things shifted. And I think you're the perfect guy to talk about this, because Ross and I often talk. The downfall of this franchise really seemed like it happened when you weren't protected and sent over to your quick stint in Vegas. Can you take us through a little bit how that went down? And like, are you talking with the team? Like, are you going to protect me or not? Do I need to hire a real estate agent here? Like, how does that work with you and a team in an expansion draft?
And Mark, just so you know, we had a temper tantrum when you weren't protected, just so you know.
No.
Yeah, no, you can go back and listen to the episode, but we were not happy about it.
Yeah, well, no. Well, first of all, I appreciate those kind words, and I do appreciate it when people say that, but I think it's obviously more. There's obviously more at stake than just me leaving the franchise, and that that's not how Rome fell. It wasn't one guy, but I just it was a weird thing because you just have this long, insane playoff run, at least by our standards. Yeah, we didn't even make it to the Stanley Cup playoff, but you still create these bonds with players when you're going to battle with each other. And so, like Dion, I was talking to him yesterday, like you still keep in touch with all these guys. And at that time, I remember crunching the numbers toward the end of the season, knowing that expansion draft was looming around the corner. And, I looked at it, and, Cece at the time was a young player, so it made sense that they would protect him. And then, with Dion and the no move, and obviously Eric being Eric, like, it was a no-brainer to me in my mind that I was probably the odd man out. So I remember sitting down with Pierre in the office at the end of the year, and obviously we had nothing but positive things to say because I had a great season by my standards, I think, and he recognized that, and we had a great run. It was a lot of fun, but then the inevitable conversation about the draft, and I kind of just paused him, and I told him, I'm like, Pierre, I understand what you have to do, and there's no hard feelings. It's a business, and I'm not an idiot. I can do the math. And we kind of left it at that. And he kind of assured me that things would work or whatever. And I think that was just him trying to be professional. And I mean, to this day, I hold no resentment towards the team for it, because looking back, it's like, do you let CC go? I mean, at the time, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, because he was like, I don't know how old he was at the time, like 24 maybe, or whatever it was. So and then of course the expansion draft happens, and the whole thing was so freaking weird, right? Like it was made a bit of a spectacle, right? It was televised, which is fine, because I get it. It's you're drawing eyeballs, but then everything from Eric filming it on the camera with his phone to me sitting at home thinking like, this is all good and great, but like, I'm going to be uprooted now with my wife and my pregnant wife, and and we loved playing in Ottawa so much. So I know everybody listening right now has already heard all this stuff, but I was a little heartbroken. And then Jim Nill, the Dallas Stars GM, finally called my agent. I think I forget how that worked out, but wanted to know if I would be remotely interested potentially had I gone to Dallas. And I remember telling my agent, I'm like, man, like, why are you asking me? Like, of course, that would be one of the few places I would die to go play in. And unfortunately, my knee, for whatever reason, had just given way about a month or two into that season. But what a professional organization. I mean, that was legitimately first class. And things went downhill from there for me as far as my health goes. But that's sort of the whole breakdown of that sequence of events that happened. And again, no hard feelings towards the organization.
Yeah, it kind of felt like Pierre Dorion, if I remember correctly, was like trying to make a side deal work and make it happen. But with Vegas, they were getting first-round picks for everybody.
Yeah, they had all the leverage. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's a lot. Well, I think you endeared yourself even more to Sens fans when it came out that you had told the Leafs to
And
Go
Habs,
away.
I think,
When-
right?
when
I
they tried.
remember getting a phone call because I played in London. Mark Hunter, I was getting a call from Mark Hunter on my phone, and I was such a chicken shit. I didn't want to answer the phone, right? Because it would kill me to say no. And then it was oh God, Claude Julien, I think, was trying to call me as well. And I respectfully told my agents, I'm like, guys, like, you have to decline Montreal and Toronto. I can't. Like, there's no
Nice.
chance.
Yeah.
And then just about every Canadian team, I think, was interested, except for maybe Vancouver didn't call. I forget. But we were. But that's
You're not
the
paying
beauty
house
of-
prices out there.
No.
Yeah,
Frugal
but
guy
they
like you,
want-
you're not even getting a pocket square.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, and so we had to play with the numbers a little bit, and I know I've already given that description, so I won't go there. But you can manipulate those 10 teams to sort of
Yeah.
guide your way, and you look at teams' depth charts, who they have on defense, and who's realistically going to go after you. And so at that point, that's the only real leverage that I had. So I was going to take full advantage of that. So I just thought, you know what, at this point, I'm just going to go play in a place that I think I can enjoy, that's relatively competitive, and I can make the most money possible. And that's about as transparent as I can get with regards to that.
No, that's perfect. And we're looking forward to hearing how the Wham show both started and ended. All that's coming up on the other side. Pilsy, first, you got a word from one of our favorite sponsors.
Well, Mark, regardless of where you moved and where you're going to live and where you're getting a new home, you need to make sure you've got security for that home. You got to keep everyone protected. And hey, the numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe Home Security to protect their home. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered 24/7 by professional monitoring agents who always have your back. With the 24/7 professional monitoring, SimpliSafe agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or can't be reached, so you're always covered. It blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and outside your home. The monitoring experts use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real, so you get the highest priority police dispatch when you need it. Customize the perfect system for your home. Just a few minutes, guys, at simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl. And you can save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
It's a Friday edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan alongside Brandon Piller. We got Marc Methot with us, former Sens defenseman and now TSN broadcast extraordinaire. Mark, if you were having a picnic, what would you bring?
Is that
Pocket
you just
squares and
taking another-
ties?
Yeah, you're taking another pot shot of that suit. You know what? A couple people told me that it hurt their eyes on the TV.
No, we won't go that far. You know what I'm going to miss about the Wally and Methot show? It felt like it was our connection to former Senators. Obviously, you have such a great rapport with so many of them. You mentioned your time in Dallas, even getting to play with Jason Spezza there. Like, what are you going to miss the most of the Wally and Methot show?
I don't miss the interviews. I never liked doing the interviews because for me it was like that was Brent's like bread and butter.
Right.
And I just liked, my favorite part was just talking the hockey, like sort of what we're doing now. So there's a bit of a hot take. Yeah, I hated doing interviews, but other than that, yeah, I mean, it was just fun. We started this thing organically. Wally came to me initially, and it just kind of evolved from there, where I think in retirement, you're looking for something to do. And I thought it was a great opportunity for me to kind of work at the craft and get used to being comfortable on the camera and delivering whatever I need to say. But working with those two was a lot of fun, and it was just time for a change.
Now, you can get into as much or as little as you want,
Sure.
but when was kind of the decision made that the Wally and Methot show wasn't going to go on anymore?
Well, we kind of milled around about it in the spring because we had different ideas of what we wanted to do. And, Brent, very passionate guy and very professional, works really hard, but wanted to pump out a lot of content. And, it was hard for me. I can't speak for Craig. You guys can have him on and he can talk to you guys, but from my vantage point, we kind of came around to it in the summer where we were doing one show a week. And for me, that was plenty. I mean, because this isn't paying bills for me, right? So I do it. I was doing the podcast because I loved it. I just like talking hockey, and it was a really cool thing to do. But and then come the fall here, like prior to the season, I think Playmaker came through, and the people that own Daily Faceoff and all them, and wanted to buy the show. And I think sort of the kicker in the deal was that we'd have to produce or pump out 5 shows a week, right?
It's a lot.
So yeah, and you guys are machines. Like kudos to you guys. You guys do it. You're content animals when it comes to this. But for me, with the TSN thing and my young family, and not necessarily needing to work, I just it didn't make sense. And so we had these conversations. I had this conversation with Brent, and I just told him, like, listen, I can't. And he totally understood. And Craig was in a similar position as me, where the maybe it didn't really match the workload. And he'll be able to kind of elaborate more. But yeah, Wally just wants to pump out more content, and the Sens fans, as you guys know, can benefit from that. They can watch him and Bobby do their thing, but it just didn't make sense for me with the TSN gig that I have right now. And I'm available, and I'm willing to do something else, just at a much lower frequency, so maybe
that's totally fair.
Maybe I'll just come on and join you guys regularly, because I sure as heck wasn't making a ton doing that. It's just for fun, right? We do it because we enjoy it. And it's a passion project, and I know you guys understand that. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. So now I've got a little free time, and I'm coaching my kid and doing the hockey thing and taking him out to Canada a couple days a week, working with Shelly Kettles, the Ottawa Senators skating coach, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, Shelly Kettles, we could get in. We could do a whole episode. We need to have her on the podcast.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, she's a firecracker. She's unreal. She's unreal. Yeah, she's good with the kids.
I believe it. Wait, but you said if you didn't have to work, Bobby made what, 80 sheets playing hockey? Like, what's he doing 5 days a week pumping out content?
Yeah, but
he's still getting paid by the Ottawa Senators, Ross.
I think.
Is that conflict of interest?
No, true. But I think Bobby. I think Bobby's going to be doing 3. At least that's from my understanding. And I can't speak for them. They're doing their thing, and good for them.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Bobby won't be doing. I don't think he'll be doing 5, but it's a lot, because I mean, for me at least, I have a hard time, like, to talk about the Ottawa Senators at that much per week on top of the TSN stuff. It's just, for me, it was too much. So they're going to do it, however they do it, and good for them. But yeah, it wasn't in my future.
Well, you're welcome on this show anytime. Even
absolutely.
A method to our Mondays could be a good little segment.
If there's a segment,
like
that's where we're workshopping that. Yeah, so something with method and Mondays. We'll do some alliteration there, but that's what we're starting with right now.
Just pass us on your agent's contact. And
Mondays on meth. Can we say we can't do that? All right.
Well, I mean, 420 pills, you can do anything. If you ever,
that's fair. That's fair.
Oh, that's awesome. So going forward with this Senators team, and not to bog down too much, but is 5 games not too long of a homestand this early in the season?
Yeah. I mean, it's long, but there's so many. You've got so much turnover in this lineup, right? With all these new players, that maybe you could argue it gives them an opportunity to settle in at home, get their family settled, the dynamic of going to the rink, being at home. And those are little things that a lot of people don't realize, that, that comfort level of being in your house, getting used to the day-to-day grind at the rink in your own barn, being familiar with the fans and giving them a taste of what the team looks like. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it really matters that much. Okay. If anything, it gives you an opportunity to kind of get your bearings, especially after the exhibition schedule they just had, where they were on the road for almost all those hocky games.
4 different provinces in 4 games. Yeah, so crazy.
I feel like Ottawa, I feel like the guys were probably looking forward to that. But I mean, now they're going to go on the road. Like, to me, the timing's good. And now you've got an opportunity to do a little bit of team building on the road. Yep. You're going to travel together. You get the team dinners now, and you kind of figure out who you want to go to dinner with, and it gets cliquey, but in a good way. It's not like cliquey as in, oh, I don't want to go hang out with that guy. It's more, you find out who's more sharing your same routines. Like Bobby and I, Craig Anderson, Chris Neal, some of the old farts that I was playing with, we were all the same program, right? We wanted to go do the early dinners, like the 6 p.m. dinner, because I was always in the belief that it's like, get the dinner out of the way, and then I can go melt in my bed for like 2 hours, rent a movie, relax. Whereas guys like Carl and Dion, they wanted to eat at like 7:30. You don't get back until like 10 or 9:30. It was way too late for me. So that's what a lot of these guys are going to go through. And this is exciting times for them because it reminds me of my time in Columbus, where we had a lot of young players like young Derek Brassard, and I'll name drop a little bit. People won't even be familiar with half of them. Chris Russell. We had
Filatov.
yeah, Phil. No. You couldn't pay me to go have dinner with that kid. And then we had a good crew. I won't go down the list of names, but we all lived in the same building, right? It was called Daniel Burton Square, right across the street from Nationwide Arena. So like we'd all go to dinner and then we'd go home and we'd all throw our headsets on and we'd play Call of Duty. At the time it was Modern Warfare. And you guys remember those lobbies. I mean, those in-between game lobbies, and like 5 NHL guys and maybe a random, and we would just shit talk people on these things. Some of the stuff that we said, and so, we had a lot of fun with that. And so I say that because like a lot of it can be relayed back to what Ottawa's going through right now with your young guys. A bunch of young kids that are making a shitload of money, going to the rink, driving their nice cars, and, feeling on top of the world. I'm so envious of them. And they're able to experience it now that they're all locked in together with these long-term deals. So exciting times ahead for sure for some of these boys.
So if you play an afternoon game, hypothetically, in Florida, in Sunrise, and then you have 2 days off before you play Tampa on Tuesday night.
And one of those days is Halloween.
What's that look like?
I don't know. What can I say on here? Yeah, man.
South Beach isn't out of the question.
Green light. You get a limo maybe with a couple guys. You plan a nice dinner for sure, and it's going to be the whole team. It's going to be a team dinner. God forbid there's a credit card game at that one. I'm hoping that might even be a rookie party opportunity. The only thing is, I know they had their Halloween party the other night.
That's tight.
That's a lot of booze. Yeah. So I don't know. Like for me though, what I always enjoyed playing, and of course I'd go out with the guys, but as I got a little older, it was just like going to a nice dinner, having some wine, getting a little light buzz on. I didn't like to drink that much. I wasn't a big drinker, but I enjoyed going out with the guys and having some good food and being somewhere. You guys mentioned South Beach. Like some of those restaurants are incredible. So I'm sure they'll be tight-lipped about it. They're not going to want to share too much, but again, that's where you build that team identity and some chemistry with the guys, a little bit of bonding, kind of find out who players really are. A lot of shoe checking going on under the table, stuff like that. It's fun.
Now, when you're doing these big events like the dinners, like you talk about, and the road trips, take it from your time in Ottawa. Who's the one that's coordinating all this? Like, does this fall on the captain? Is there like one extrovert guy, or is there like a foodie that does all this? Like, yeah, who takes care of getting the boys all together in the right spots at the right time?
There's always one guy. Like there's always one guy. It doesn't matter who he is. It's probably a well-traveled player. It's been around a little bit and has contacts in different cities. I mean, it doesn't really necessarily take a guy like that to organize a dinner, because typically speaking, a captain or some of the leadership group will know in advance that next week we're in Florida. Maybe we should call somewhere and maybe book the back room or something.
Right.
But like as far as coordinating like the nightlife and stuff, there's always a donkey on the team that happens to know everybody everywhere. And I can speak to that. I mean, when you play 5, 6, 7 years in the NHL, you network. You get to know people in LA. You get to know people in West Hollywood. You get to know people in South Beach, Florida. Yeah, and you get to know people in Winnipeg. You get a nice little table somewhere downtown by Earl's or something. Eat some chicken wings. So it's just the way it is. And players coordinate. And it's not often though that you'll have a full team dinner. It's usually kind of split up a little bit, but you guys mentioned it. Like in Florida, for example, that is green light central. So
nice. They're
probably going to get together and probably know a guy somewhere in a nice restaurant and go from there.
Who was the guy on your Ottawa Senators teams who would always have the nightlife taken care of?
I feel like Dion would be a good guy for that, especially with his wife having a lot of connections.
Yeah. So when we were out west, like Alicia knew everybody, obviously, and Dion, but like, we weren't planning these extravagant nights out. Like they were sort of on a whim, because if we got shit kicked in LA, like we probably don't want to go party like it's 1999 afterwards, right? Like you're going to be a little bit careful with that. But yeah, like again, like that's an example of like when I went to Paris Hilton's house back in the day, which I thought was like amazing, and I met a bunch of celebrities, and I was out with some rookies in terrible suits. You know, it took one guy to know one person, and then all of a sudden you're on this bus going up, you know, in the Hollywood Hills to some cool location that you probably don't belong in, right? So, and then from there you meet some people, and all of a sudden I know some people, and that's sort of how you build this network. But yeah, it's players like Dion, Eric Carlson knew a bunch of people obviously too, and there's always someone that knows somebody, or maybe you know a player that plays for Florida that can take care of you. Oftentimes that's the way it works. You know, a veteran on your team knows a vet in that home city, and they'll sort of take care of you there, and that's usually how it goes down.
Well, an undercover part of this green light night in Florida, and maybe it's too early in the season for this, but it'll be the first time Matthew Tkachuk hosts the Senators and Brady in Florida. So you wonder if that adds a wrinkle to it as well. Matt, this has been awesome. Really looking forward to making this a recurring thing. And man, now you're setting the bar high because you wore a Chewbacca shirt the first time you were on. Now you got the Wu-Tang going. So the bar is set high, and I'm not hearing any slander on your suits anymore. Because now that you're a friend of the show, we make it very
we got your back.
We root for our guys. We're pit bulls when people go after them. Just ask Jake Sanderson after he was drafted. Tyler Clevin came on the show, and now we're just dogs for him. But
Tyler Boucher, a great example of that.
Tyler Boucher is a very good example.
I love it. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I love the work you guys do, and anytime you want me on, I'll come on. All good.
That's perfect. Well, we do have a final question for you as well. Does this start to the season now 4-3? Are you more confident in the Sens than you were at the start of the year, or less, or the same?
Oh, yeah. And I'm reluctant to put a stamp on anything when you've played like 7 games, right? But I think certainly pleasantly surprised. You know, the Norris thing kind of throws me off a little bit now because potentially there goes 40 goals. But yeah, I still think this team I still think it's going to be an uphill battle to get that playoff spot, but I'm more hopeful now than I was in the spring, or rather in the fall, like early fall. So I think Sens fans have every reason to be excited. I'd love for them to flood the CTC a little more. The ones that are going right now, as you guys have seen on TV, it's lively, which is fantastic. It's an exciting brand of hockey that Ottawa's brought to the table. I think there's a better chance now, but with the injuries now to Norris, hard to say. I'll give you guys a better answer in a couple weeks. How about that?
Yeah, that's totally fair. Final question for me, sticking to the Norris thing. When a big injury like that happens early in the season, what does that do to a locker room? Like, is that something where it's like, oh man, it just takes the air out of the balloon kind of thing? Or is it like, or is there a certain energy, guys being like, okay, I need to step up and elevate my role here? Like, from your experience, what does that do to a locker room?
Yeah, like with Carl, like that was early in the year when he tore his Achilles, right?
Yeah, I mean, anybody that told you that it didn't cast a bit of a cloud over the locker room would be full of shit, right? Like initially it's tough, but you look around the Eastern Conference, just as an example, like, this isn't exclusive to the Ottawa Senators, right? Like you've seen other significant injuries going down, and that's just, you have to deal with it. It's a contact sport. I mean, the idea that all of your top guys are going to be healthy for the entire year, you're a little naive if you believe that's the case, typically speaking, right? So now in this case, it's a little extreme. He may potentially miss the entire year. We don't know what his recovery is going to look like. So it's tough, but you've got some guys you can lean on now. And the emergence of Pinto is promising. You know, do I think Derek Brassard's going to be on that second line? I know I already touched on it, but that's a tall order and ask of him. So maybe at some point you shift Pinto up if you think he's ready, but Pinto hasn't played 82 games before. This is new to him. Same with Sanderson. Everyone's ooh and ahhing over these two guys, and rightfully so. They're going to be studs, probably perennial all-stars, but they're not used to that NHL grind yet. And it's a fucking grind. So yeah, I think
the most Shane Pinto's ever played in a season is 54 games, and that was in high school.
Think about that. And I thought it was an adjustment going from 68 in the OHL, and I had a hard time playing full years. I played a physical game, never really played 82 games in a season. It was really hard for me. So, but to stick on the positive note, they've got options now to replace Norris. So, you know, I think at this point, the mindset is, and they've got great leadership in that group. You've got Brady. They're going to get the guys right. They've got some experience now where they've all got a few years under their belts. They're going to be okay. It's just replacing that workload of goals, you know, specifically on the power play. But conversely, you've got Giroux now, you've got Brassard, you've got DeBrincat. I think they're going to be okay.
It's going to be awesome. Just like you're going to have a great time tonight with the pros versus Joes. Next time we have you on, we need a full report on Fulton and Reed. Sorry, Methot and Neil going and taking care of all those Joes out there. Enjoy it, and we appreciate your time, Meth.
Yeah, we'll do it next week. I'll talk to you guys. I'll give you guys an update.
Sounds good. And for that, we say goodbye. Have a great weekend. We'll be back for the postcast tomorrow after the Ottawa Senators take on the Florida Panthers. For Marc Methot and Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan, and this has been the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.